Hello, welcome to another Pauper video. Today we're going to be playing uh, Poison Storm, except we're not exactly playing it. We are watching replays today. Unfortunately, that is the case, but I had to capitalize on this moment because this is the time. We did it. We got the trophy. We didn't. We split the final round for the 5-0. We hit the board, and I feel awesome about it. I really like this list that I came up with here, based on input from everybody else, from watching Cosmic Charles, from all the different input that everybody has had. So I would love to share this and let you see this run where we went 4-0, and then we'll watch those 4 rounds. Ended up splitting the finals, and pretty excited. So yeah, enough rambling, but let's look at our list. This deck basically uses poison to kill our opponent with infect. So we have Prologue to Phyresis, which says each opponent gets a poison counter, draw a card. And we have Infectious Inquiry, which says you draw 2 cards and lose 2 life. Each opponent gets a poison counter. Once we have a poison counter on our opponent, we're going to basically storm off and just keep adding poison counters through our proliferation cards, which is Contentious Plan, Proliferate, draw a card. Experimental Augury, which says look at the top 3 cards of your library, put one of them in your hand, and the rest on the bottom of your library in any order, and proliferate. So it's Anticipate with Proliferate. Then we have a draw 3 with Proliferate. We also have Thirsting Roots, which I was very down on before, but I've decided kind of how to work it into the deck. And Thirsting Roots says either search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, put it in your hand, and shuffle, or proliferate. So in the early game, we can potentially get our off-color basic, because we're basically a blue deck splashing green and black with a random red card here. But in the late game, once you have your basics or your mana in play, proliferation is going to add to your Chalice, make it huge. So Chalice taps for mana per charge counter on it. It's also going to add mana to the Pentad Prism, and it's going to add counters to these depletion lands, depletion counters. So our depletion lands tap for 2 mana, and when they run out of counters, then they go away. But we're just going to keep proliferating onto them so they never go away. So our mana is better than Tron. Yeah. So this also helps storming off. Like, this is 1 mana. If you have Pentad Prism in play, it's 0 mana to just add a proliferation, basically storm count 1. But if you have more than 1 Pentad Prism or Chalice in play, this starts like generating mana essentially. So for everything that you're adding counters on, it's +1 mana. It becomes like a dark ritual, very, very powerful. What this doesn't do is add card advantage. So before I was playing, not playing it basically because it doesn't cantrip. So I was playing Steady Progress instead. And Steady Progress says proliferate, draw a card for 3 mana, it's an instant. And that was kind of medium. What I ended up figuring out is that Thirsting Roots the card like disadvantage of this being a ritual can be made up by having more cards. So how do we have more cards? We have Vivisurgeon's Insight, which is a draw 3, and then we have Deep Analysis, which is essentially a draw 4 for 1 card. It does cost us some life, so it's like 6 mana, draw 4 cards, pay 3 life. I like that. And we make up for all that with the Weather the Storm for the life loss from our Infectious Inquiries and our Deep Analysis. And basically, when I calculated it out, with all these cards, card draw spells in the deck, our deck has a raw card draw power of 48 cards. I think that will make up for this little card disadvantage pretty well. So we can afford to use this as a ritual. Previously, this slot was Lotus Petal, but I think that Thirsting Roots is going to synergize a lot better, and this is basically a maximum synergy deck. Now, the last 2 cards in the deck that I didn't talk about are Breath Weapon and Mystical Teachings. Mystical Teachings is essentially a 5th copy of Weather the Storm here, but can also grab Breath Weapon. So basically our plan versus red decks is to go Teachings, or cast Weather the Storm to live, and then once we've kind of stabilized, we're going to get Breath Weapon and clear the board, and then keep going. You'll see that happen in this league, and it has been a relatively successful plan. Now our worst matchup is probably Fairies. So Breath Weapon is also very good against Fairies in the main deck. So we're playing a second one in the sideboard. And in this league, I've decided to just completely not play Nile Spellbomb. I was thinking that it was good for playing against graveyard synergy like Flicker decks and for graveyard combo decks, but those don't really exist. And I have not been bringing it in against Terror. I've actually been playing 4 Moments Peace and probably bringing them in over a couple of Roots and Chalices for Terror. So you just fog, draw cards, proliferate, and then eventually they lose. Their other cards in our sideboard are 4 Anoint with Affliction, which is also very good versus fairies, and Walls, which is one of the worst matchups too. Because Walls is one of the worst matchups, we're also playing 2 Inside Outs specifically for Walls. It can also kill a Sunscape Familiar or a Mnemonic Wall. And what's nice about this is that it can be cast with blue mana off of one of our 8 blue lands. We don't have to pay the red cost to actually kill a wall, plus it's a 2-for-1. And then we're rounding it out with 4 Bring the Ending, which is obviously a very good counterspell. So anytime we don't actually need the Weather Storm life gain, we'll probably just bring in the 4 Bring the Ending. So like against a pure control deck where their clock is very slow, we'll just swap the Bring the Ending for the Weather the Storms. I think that covers the deck. Trying out some streaming from a different location or recording from a different location today, so let me know how the quality is. And if you're interested in this content and you enjoy it, check out the Patreon, patreon.com/CaliKais. I've got the sideboard guides for Familiars, Altertron. I will update for this list the sideboard guides, and I've got the primers for the different decks that I specialize in as well. Hit me up with a like and subscribe, leave a comment, and let's go ahead and get into the video. All right, here we go. So we're going to be running through a recording of the replays so I can skip around and pause because the interface for Magic Online is pretty terrible. So I'm going to full screen this. All right, now it's good. Go ahead and press play. Okay, so I kept this hand based on Pentad Prism and Everflowing Chalice. It's a kind of a sketchy hand because we don't have blue sources and we're relying on the double Vivisurgence, but I think that's okay. So let's go ahead and run it. Our opponent leads with Cliffgate on white, so we know they're on Naya gates, which means we're totally fine, and we end up drawing the Contentious Plan, so we just run that out. We're good there. They play a Plains, Smash to us our Artifact, so that's pretty bad for me because I was relying on that Artifact for blue sources. So here I'm just going to go ahead and kick the Everflowing Chalice and then bide my time. I'm looking for a second blue source here to cast the Vivisurgence Insights. And they end up smash to dusting the other one, so now I have to just make land drops and pass. So here's the land drop. We play a Synthesizer, get a Glinthawk. Glinthawk finds a Glinthawk, but they can't cast that because they don't have an artifact. Play a Core Skyfisher picking up a land. They're trying to add a clock, and we end up top decking a blue draw spell with Prologue, so that's really good. It also gets our poison counters on our opponent. Prologue, I end up drawing Mystical Teachings here. So Teachings can get us like an Augury or something to try to find our second blue source. They're playing a Dawnbringer Cleric and gaining life, playing Core Skyfisher, pick up the Cleric. Now they have 6 power on the table. We find a Deep Analysis, so I'm just going to jam that. Believe. Draw some cards. We end up finding a Scary, which is putting us in a very good position because next turn we can Insight or Plan plus Weather the Storm. We can go like Deep Analysis, Plan, Weather the Storm. So let's see what happens. Our opponent finds the Basilisk Gate, gets a Cliff Gate off the Synthesizer, and attacks us for 8, putting us to 8. So on our turn, we find Experimental Augury. And what we're going to do here is Contentious Plan first, so that we have the raw blind card draw, and we use that before we use our card selection. So Contentious Plan, we proliferate, find another Contentious Plan, so we're going to tap for all of these, go ahead and cast a Contentious Plan, proliferate again. Now we get a Weather the Storm. So we go ahead and cast the Augury. I'm going to go back in time a little bit. Contentious Plan again. And here comes the Augury. Alright, so the Augury finds Chalice, Peatbog, Scary, and we don't need the lands right now, but Chalice will allow us to go, since we have 3 mana, kick the Chalice and then cast Weather the Storm for Storm 5, gain 15 life. So that is the plan. Next turn we can storm off some more and gain some more life with another Weather the Storm. So their clock is just slow enough that the Weather the Storms are going to just run them over. They're attacking for a lot more because they found a second Basilisk Gate. And now we found an Augury. So what I want to do is Augury first to add mana to this Everflowing Chalice, making the Augury essentially cost 1 mana. We Augury and then we find Pentad Prism, Island Breath Weapon, and we immediately take the Pentad Prism because Insight's going to be able to add counters to that. So we add counters to our stuff, and we're going to play out the Pentad, and then play the Insight, and then I'm leaving enough mana to go doot doot Weather the Storm. Play my land, cast Weather the Storm, gain another 12 life. They are attacking for 12, so that was just a 1 turn. More than 12 now, so it's 14. They're getting in. Right now we have 2 poison. So we have Inquiry and Insight for 2 poison, put them to 8. And this is drawing us 5 cards. Plus we have Weather the Storm. Alright, so we draw Augury. Augury finds Deep Analysis. We'll go ahead and add a bunch of counters. Okay, adding all the counters, and then just go ahead and Insight. We find Thirsting Roots, Prologue, Inquiry. We basically just crush them here. Doink. And add all the counters. Then we'll just cast a Prologue and you're dead. Alright, so I forgot to check out the sideboarding. So I'm going to go over here where I listed what I did. Back over here. That's Horse Ducks. Okay, it loses Lucas Cap. Go over here. Alright, so what we did was cutting 2 Everflowing Chalice, a Teachings, and a Breath Weapon, because Breath Weapon's not very good against this opponent, and we're bringing in the 4 Moments Piece. So we're expecting our opponent to bring in a bunch of Pyroblasts, but we don't really care, and they could also bring in Gorilla Shaman, which is why we're trimming on these Everflowing Chalice. So let's go back to the league. Okay. Sorry about this jumping around, but, you know, the replays are kind of annoying. It's much better to just record these replays and talk about it that way. Okay, so now we're on the draw. Here we go. This hand, not very good. Just all lands and Weatherstorm, we have to mulligan. Okay, this hand, we have 1 land, and we couldn't cast the Thirsting Roots, so we have to mulligan. Potentially could keep it if this were a green, but I feel like that's not a great plan. So we mulligan again. Now we find Moments Piece, Infectious Inquiry, Prologue, bunch of lands, and a Pentad Prism. So I'm going to keep this and then put back, well, I'll end up putting back the Prologue and the Moments Piece. This is because we can cast Pentad Prism plus Infectious Inquiry on turn 3. And then if we draw any Proliferation, we're good. We end up drawing its current Experimental Augury, so we can just play that out, or play the Peat Bog. Next turn, play the Scary, pass the turn. Our opponent's going to play Secret Away, so we'll untap, play Infectious Inquiry, and just go ahead and Augury and Proliferate. We find another Augury. Our opponent's Synthesizers. They find a Spare Supplies, so playing the Spare Supplies, and here I'm noting that they're holding up a red mana, so I'm guaranteeing that they have a Pyroblast in hand. So I really don't want to run my 5 mana spell into a Pyroblast. So let's watch how that goes. They're getting in for 4. Bam. Okay, we find a Scary. I'm going to go ahead and play out the Pentad Prism. Thirsting Roots. This is just adding Storm, because I know I want to cast the Weather Storm this turn. Okay. And now I'm going to play the Infectious Inquiry, and it looks like I'm just passing, so we didn't Weather the Storm that turn. I was just trying to not run stuff into the Pyroblast. But next turn we're going to have to do that. They smashed to just my Prism, and I decided to just Weather the Storm in response. Although maybe, or I had to Weather the Storm there because I didn't have any green mana after, so that's why I did that. Okay, makes sense. So this next turn, we're getting beat down. We probably want to try to find a green source. Here we go. We have a contentious plan. Now, if I just jam the Insight, we're going to get trounced by a Pyro. Our opponent only has 3 cards in hand, though. I play the Augury. So I find Weather Storm, Swamp, Woodlot. I'd like to take the Woodlot for the green source, but I think you have to take the Weather Storm. Let's see what happens. Take the Weather. Okay. So we go ahead and get all the stuff. Cast an Augury again, and here's where they do Pyroblast. Luckily, we've already put a bunch of depletion counters on these things. Our opponent's at 6. They only have a 2/2, and they seem to be stalled out. They crack the Synthesizer for a Synthesizer. Find a Smash Dust that they can't cast. So I find Thirsting Roots, which could get me a green source, but I don't have a green source to get it with. Cast Deep Analysis. We find Everflowing Chalice and Woodlot, so I'm just going to kick the Everflowing Chalice once, get it into play, and pass the turn. Next turn, I'm trying to storm off as much as possible. And our opponent is very kind and taps out here. Because if they were holding up Pyroblast, I would be very concerned in this position, but they're not. So they get in for 4. We cast Thirsting Roots and Proliferate a bunch. So we're able to cast that first to make this cost 2, so this ends up being mana neutral. It does cost us a green source, but that's okay. Now we're going to cast Insight without tapping the Everflowing Chalice if possible, and floating this green mana so we can cast Weather the Storm after. So there's the Insight, puts them to 8 poison. So now I'm thinking, let's see, probably just cast a Contentious Plan. So Contentious Plan here means if I draw a poison spell, they're dead, and if I don't, I have Weather the Storm. We Proliferate and find a Peat Bog, so we just cast the Deep Analysis from the graveyard, since it's 0 life, but it is 2. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is, I cast the Deep Analysis from the graveyard. It did cost me 3 life, but it added a Storm, so the Weather the Storm is just going to replace that life, and then we cast it. So now we're going to gain 15, putting us to 21, so we have to hope that they can't kill us for 21, and then we have 2 ways to deal them lethal poison, plus some ways to stall out. Alright. Our opponent's going to play Spare Supplies, plays a Lightning Bolt, bashes us, that's cool. And then they Dust to Dust out of desperation, attack, and concede the game. I'm pretty sure that's what happens. GG. Alright. Round 2 versus Horse Duck. This player has been known to play Ponza in the past, or Synthburn. So I'm hoping they're on Synthburn over Ponza because I really don't want to play against Ponza. Coming in. So we end up mulling. Let's go back to that hand. Alright, so we mulled that because it was a 1-lander. Now we're going to keep this one. This has Depletion plus Island plus Contentious Plan or Augury. And if they are on burn, we have Weather the Storm in hand. Looks like they're on red. They play an Epic here. We find a blue depletion, so we're just going to play that out. And they go Land, Chain Lightning, putting us to 16, and then 13 with the attacks. After they... Okay, there's the attacks. So we find a Thirsting Roots. Let's see what we do. We Contentious Plan first. Experimental Augury, find Infectious Inquiry. Play out a land, and pass the turn. So I'm banking on not dying this turn. I cast a Dwarven Forge Tender. And we find a We're going to play Thirsting Roots. Whoa, that was fast. So basically my plan here was Thirsting Roots so I can cast Infectious Inquiry, then cast Weather the Storm. So we cast Infectious Inquiry, and I find a Pentemprism, but I still can't use that for Storm. So I'm just going to cast Weather the Storm here for 9, putting myself to 18. They have a lot of damage because here every single burn spell that is plus 2 damage with the 2 Paralysis creatures, so we're very likely dead. Then they go Lightning Bolt into Galblast. Galblast here notably is just a shock, since they only have 1 artifact. Galblast into Galblast, So we're very, very, very close to dead. They have one card in hand. Bam. Okay. We're at 2. The only way to win here is to storm off into a weather storm, but we do have Pentad Prism, making both of these cost 0, and we have the Experimental Augury. So what we want to do is play out the Pentad Prism, cast the Prologue, go Proliferate, Proliferate, Augury, try to hit weather. So here comes the Pentad, and then we cast Thirsting Roots. Looks like I'm just going to go ahead and cast the Thirsting Roots first, doesn't particularly matter. We find a Contentious Plan, so play Contentious Plan again, draw another card. Find Vivid Surgeon's Insight, which is not going to win the game. Not keep me alive either. We cast Thirsting Roots. So that puts this at 4 counters. Then after the Augury, this will be back at 3 counters, which means that we can cast a Weather Storm and keep the Pentad Prism in play. Okay, so this is the Hail Mary. We find it. We find the weather. Never didn't have it. Bam! Here comes the Weather the Storm. Our opponent's at 6 poison and they have 1 card in hand. So I'm feeling very confident, and then, as Burn always does, they cast Reckless Impulse, which means they're going to draw 2 cards. They find a Synthesizer, cast the Synthesizer, draws another card. So they've drawn 3 cards this turn. They find a Lightning Bolt, plus those 2 cards that they drew. Those 3 cards they drew are plus 4 damage. Land, Lightning Bolt. So we went from 23. We were at 2 the last turn. We went back up to 23. Now we're getting attacked for another 9, going back to 11. So it just swings all over the place. And we end up top decking a Pentad Prism. So this is very good. We can play the Pentad Prism, use our lands here. Then that'll allow us to cast Vivid Surgeon's Insight, which will give us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 mana, plus 3 cards. And then any of the proliferation cards that we draw, like Plan or Augury, will be able to cantrip while being 0 mana. So here we go. Pentad Prism. It's still kind of a Hail Mary here. Cast this. We find Weather the Storm, Deep Analysis, Chalice. And because we're in this position where we have 5 mana, we're going to go ahead and put all the counters here, and then we're going to use 2 of this mana to cast Everflowing Chalice, 1 more to cast Weather the Storm in combination with Chalice, and then we'll still have counter on each of these. So then we can Deep Analysis on the next turn, looking for proliferation spells to keep these from going away. Here comes the 3 cards. Oh no, we were just proliferating. It's kind of weird because Vivid Surgeon's Insight says draw 3 cards, proliferate, so you have to draw and then proliferate, and then there's other ones that are proliferate, draw cards. It's very confusing. So you have to like add the counters before you see the card that you get. Anyway, so here we Weather the Storm. We're back up to 23. Our opponent has End the Festivities, 1 more card in hand. It's Lava Dart. So they could Lava Dart again, but they declined. If they Lava Darted again, this would be 9 damage plus 1, putting us to 12. But I think that they wanted to keep it around so that they could crack the Synthesizer. So we play out the Deep Analysis. I'm afraid of dying, so I don't want to flashback the Deep Analysis right now. End up just casting Deep Analysis again, finding a land, playing a land. And because we found the teachings, I think we're in a really good position. So now, in my mind, I'm thinking, how can I play teachings twice, as well as cast Weather the Storm? So what I decided was, I can go Chalice on Chalice here, or whatever. Yeah, Chalice here. That gives me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 mana, 11 mana, and then I can cast Teachings for 2 here. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 mana. I have Teachings for Augury, cast Augury off these 2, and then I'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 mana. Then I can cast Teachings for Weather, and then cast Weather off the 9 mana. And that should leave me with a little bit more, and then they get another poison counter, and we'll be all good. So I'm trying to think about how I can get that done. They end up Cold Oath Rebirthing their Synthesizer, finding a land, hitting me with a Lava Dart, and attacking for 7, putting me to 6. Right? Yeah. So we find an untapped land, which changes the math a little bit, and it was a forest. So the first thing we're going to do is play the Chalice. Then I'm going to Teachings for the Augury. Get the Augury. We find Contentious Plan and Weather the Storm. And since I already had enough mana to Teachings back for the Weather Storm, I take the Contentious Plan because if we do top deck another poison spell, we win the game again. Plus, we can add mana to our chalices here off of this. So this Augury is 2 mana and actually is plus 2 mana on the prisms and the chalices. Contentious Plan is also going to be plus 2 mana. We're going to end up with 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 mana, which we can easily flashback the deep analysis, the teachings for either weather or just win the game, which I realized as I'm playing this out, I can just teachings for a prologue or something. So let's see how it goes. Contentious Plan, add a bunch of counters over here, so it's very mana positive. Just mana positive. Okay. And then I cast the teachings. They have no cards in hand, so I just get the prologue and kill them. Really wanted to, I guess, get an augury, get another prologue. Really overdo it. That is the game. Here's all the counters, and we win! Alright, round... Oh, this is post board. So we're at 820. Let's go over here. Where am I? Here we are. Okay. Kind of look at the sideboard plan here. We're going to be bringing in the Breath Weapon, and we cut that for the Vivid Searcher's Insight. Otherwise, I decided to not make any changes. Sorry about the skipping and stuff, but you know. Alright, back in time. Okay. A little bit of a rewind. Okay. Let's see what our hand looks like. Alright, it's obviously not a keep. We only have one land. Second hand is very good. Well, not super good because we really need a proliferation. But we do have a bunch of card draw. We have Weather the Storm, so I'm going to keep it here. So our opponent goes Swifty, which is a very scary start. They're on a mull to 6. Found another land. And this is an interesting game. They find a Smash to Dust, not Smash to Dust, but a Smash to Smithereens off the synthesizer, and no second land. So I'm afraid that they're going to have artifact removal, and I would like to hold up Weather Storm just in case, so I'm just kind of biding my time. I don't have proliferation, so I'm nervous on using this Woodlot. They play an Epicure and don't find another land, whereas I find a Woodlot and play it out and pass the turn. Now I feel okay about like popping off a Weather Storm if I need to. I'm still trying to hold off on it. So they're going to attack for 3, leaving open a red. And I was a little bit confused as to why they would have done that. But I ended up top decking Contentious Plan, so I feel very confident because I can just go ahead and play my Prism, Chalice, Plan, Weather the Storm, and everything will be cool. What our opponent does is we play Pentad Prism into Neverflowing Chalice into Contentious Plan. I was hoping to leave open these two. And they Red Blast my plan, which is pretty bad, but I do have the 1 extra mana, and I just cast Weather the Storm here. There's the Weather, the Epicure on their turn into Lightning Bolt. We were at 23, we go to 17. Okay, my turn. So they still don't have any counters on them, so I think here I have a prologue. I really don't want to lose these lands, so now I have to just try and cast prologue and see if I can top deck a proliferation. We find another prologue, so I end up passing the turn. They use a blood token to discard a mountain, and they bolt us. There's another 4 damage coming in, putting us to 10. Bam. Okay, so we top deck Thirsting Roots. While not as good as the Contentious Plan, that is nice here because now we can get our mana back online and use that as a ritual. So Thirsting Roots. And then we're going to Deep Analysis. We find another Thirsting Roots. We cast the Thirsting Roots. So now we have a ton of counters on this Everflowing Chalice, and we can start just jamming Deep Analyses. Alright, we're going to play the prologue, and then we need to just pass the turn. Here again, we're hoping we don't die. Our opponent discards a mountain into Galvanic Blast for 2, putting us to 4, and we're back in a situation where we'd have to just Hail Mary. So we have a Pentad Prism. Looks like I'm going to cast the Prism first, cast the Deep Analysis from the graveyard. I did that just thinking if I'm going to die, I'm going to die. I would rather have use 2 mana to draw 2 cards than 3 mana to draw 2 cards. Like, being at 1 is the same as being at 2, essentially. And after I cast either from the graveyard, I can't cast both. So for 6 mana, I can cast Deep Analysis from the yard and Deep Analysis from hand, hoping to draw something. So we are going to cast another Deep Analysis, and I find Weather the Storm, just luck sacking all over the place. So here is a really cool position. Right now we can gain 12 off this Weather, or we can cast Infectious Inquiry and then respond with Weather Storm while it's on the stack. So you have to make sure you pull the control key. So I'm going to put Weather, Infectious Inquiry on the stack, and respond with Weather the Storm. So this is +1 life off the Weather. It also gets me some poisons. And I'm at 14. Teachings in hand. We find the Breath Weapon. So now it's like, okay, I'm fine. So I Teachings for an Augury, making sure that I can get my mana back online. Then I'm going to Augury, find the Thirsting Roots. Just go ahead and cast the Thirsting Roots and cast the Prologue. Cast the Prologue first, cast the Thirsting Roots, put a bunch of counters on everything, and then I'll use 1, 2, 3. Actually, we have a mana floating, so we'll just get cast Breath Weapon. You can see here that Breath Weapon was really good against all their 1/1s and the Swift Spheres, but it's very specifically not good against that Dwarf that's 1/3. I don't think that there's a way, like, one of the things that we tried before was playing Swirling Sandstorm, and Swirling Sandstorm is good at cleaning up the 1/3s, but I think it's probably better just to be able to have a Teachings target in the Breath Weapon. And Breath Weapon is better versus fairies, so I'm just going to keep it that way. And they end up scooping when they untap. So we got kind of lucky. We still had 1 Deep Analysis from the yard, but that would have put us to 6, which is scary, and we're going to go to round 3. Okay, next round. Here we go. This is round 3. We opened up Peat Bog, Forest, Double Chalice. Opponent says, good luck, have fun, love the content. Thank you. Thank you, Brett Jester. Appreciate that a lot. And they open up on Island Fairy, so I'm thinking we are dead. I'm very, very scared of fairies, as with this deck. So let's see how it goes. Find a Thirsting Roots, and in this position, that's really nice because we get to Thirsting Roots for the island if we don't draw it. Opponent cycles for an island, plays another Fairy Seer, so we're immediately thinking, okay, I need to get my Chalice down, Thirsting Roots for an island, pass the turn. We get in for 1, and that's what we do. Chalice, Roots for an island, pass the turn. So next turn, we could potentially Chalice into Chalice, but I'm kind of nervous about, okay, never mind. I was nervous about having the Spell Stutter Sprite hit me, but they just ninja me. So we go Chalice into Augury, a Contentious Plan, okay. So I know that I wanted to find, okay, so I think here, this position, probably should not have used the Contentious Plan. We should have cast the Augury, looking for a blue source. We also have Thirsting Roots that can get the blue source, but we're pinched on blue mana very highly, and that would have been a lot better. Okay, they go for the Fairy Seer, and leave open Spellstutter Sprite, or Counterspell, getting over 3. We find Vivisurge's Insight, so we're going to Thirsting Roots Proliferate and just cast Deep Analysis. Opponent doesn't respond, so we try for an Infectious Inquiry, and they do have the Spellstutter Sprite. Wrecked. Alright, we pass the turn. We're at 13. We have a lot of mana, but all of it's colorless, and they start blowing up my colorless mana. We still haven't done any poison to our opponent, so I don't feel very good about it. Find an infectious inquiry, so now we can actually deal some poison. Cast that. Play the Pentad Prism. Play the plan. Okay, now this time, this time I think I should have planned first for the blind draw instead of the augury first. So I feel like I messed both of those up. But now we're just going to weather the storm and try to survive a little while. Gain 12. Now it's our opponent's turn. Go for the end step brainstorm, probably looking for more counter spells or some lightning bolts and stuff. Oh, they end up shuffling, getting in for 5 with another ninja. It feels all but hopeless here. I think the better. So it's a weird spot because I could deep analysis here. Oh, I thought I had a counter left on this Pentad Prism. Yeah, I don't really have a lot of stuff to do. Probably should have contentious planned first to draw out the Spellstutter Sprite and then try to do something. We draw into some blue spells that we can't cast. So you can see here that this only one having one blue source in play is really hosing me. And I believe this is where I concede. So for sideboarding against fairies, you can see that we took out Teachings, 2 Chalices, 2 Weather the Storms, and we're bringing in Breath Weapon and all the Anoints. So it's 5 cards in, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cards out. I don't think you need Weather the Storm really in the post-board matchups, but we do want a couple of them. All right. Go to the game, and this is obviously no keep, no lands. This is a pretty good keep. Pentad Prism into Prologue, or Pentad Prism into Thirsting Roots into Prologue. Actually, we can. Yeah, let's see what happens. I think I should probably Pentad Prism into Thirsting Roots. Looks like I decided to just put down the Prologue. I'm thinking here that the purpose of that was to just have more card draw. Usually when I mulligan, I want to keep things that have a higher value so I can buy back out of the mulligan, basically. So I already had the Infectious Inquiry. I knew I had the black mana. Being able to draw 2 would be better than just drawing 1. Plus, Prologue could get eaten by a Spellstutter Sprite, so that's another reason not to play it. The Thirsting Roots, put some counters, and then I decided to pass. I was thinking I could hold up an Anointment Affliction for a ninja, but I did not remember that ninja is 4 mana, so Anointment Affliction doesn't kill ninja the Deep Hours. Decided to go for the Experimental Augury, because if they try to Spellstutter Sprite, I could kill the Spellstutter Sprite with Anoint the Affliction. But I didn't want to cast a Chalice into Spellstutter Sprite because I can't interact with that. And we found a blue source, which is great. More blue sources is more better. They brainstorm. Okay, so they are getting in again, doing nothing. So I'm holding up the Inquiry still. Okay, the Inquiry, which is really, really bad for me, because now I lost my card draw. So we're kind of dead in the water. I think here I should have anointed this so that they can't ninja on their turn, but I decided not to. Just casting the Everflowing Chalice and passing, because remember I thought that I could anoint the ninja the Deep Hours. They do nothing, and we get really lucky at top deck at Deep Analysis. I'd say that versus fairies, Deep Analysis is one of the best cards you could possibly have, just because top decking it is so good. Alright, make our land drop, flashback at Deep Analysis, and pass the turn. We're in a bad spot here because we have all of these depletion counters left, and we don't want our lands to go away. We're kind of hoping that they tap out. Our opponent ends up going for the ninja. They still have not been making land drops, so they have to get there. They ninja, don't make a land drop again, pass the turn, and I find Vivisurgeon's Insight off the top. We end up having to blow one of our woodlots, and what we're going to do is use a Pentad Prism counter, I believe, so we don't have to tap the Chalice, and then this Insight's only going to cost us 3 mana, essentially. Let's see if that happens. Yes, that's what we do. We draw 3, still have not poisoned them whatsoever. Play a land, draw 3 again. Find Contentious Plan, Anoint with Affliction. So I'm just going to cast a Weather the Storm here, gain some life. We really need to get some poison counters around our opponent. A Ninja, cast a Brainstorm, looking for a red source or something. Play another island. Okay. So here we have the red source, or, well, whatever. We have our another black source. We have Contentious Plan. Let's see what we do. Play Pentad Prism, play Contentious Plan, get counters on everything. Okay. I think I probably should have just cast the Deep Analysis, but I thought having the mana from the Chalice would be good. Here I'm going to Deep Analysis instead of casting the Augury. Really need to get poison on the opponent. We DA, draw some cards, so we find Infectious Inquiry. Now we can cast that. They'd have to counterspell it. They don't have the counterspell, so now we are free to go. Just start casting a lot of cantripping stuff. And we play Contentious Plan, they have nothing. We're going to Augury. And then once we have 3 counters on our opponent, we can kill this with the Anoint the Affliction. So cast the Augury, find Inquiry for more card draw. And we're going to proliferate a lot, making sure to put a counter on our opponent, kill our Ninja, and they scoop to that. Works for me. Okay, game 3. All the marbles. So we have Thirsting Roots, Double Deep Analysis, Insight. They're on the play. It's a sketchy hand, but especially if they have early ninjas, we're still going to keep it. It's a lot of mana, and they lead on a Preordain, which is very, 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 very good for me. Not having the turn 1 Fairy Seer into Ninja. We find Contentious Plan. Go ahead and... Okay, let's go back. So they played out their Fairy Seer, and I have an Anoint with Affliction in hand. So what I really want to do is kill this Fairy Seer so that they can't Ninja. Like I was saying, like Ninja just runs away with the game. So here we Thirsting Roots for a Swamp and kill it. If the Thirsting Roots here were Lotus Petal, we would have been able to do the exact same thing while putting this Scary into play. So whether or not that's better, not really sure. I guess now we have the black source, so we could cast a Contentious Plan off the Scary on the next turn. So I'm trying to decide if Thirsting Roots would have been better as Lotus Petal, and I think here Thirsting Roots is better. Kill it, pass a turn. Opponent passes, so we play a land and pass back. Generally against a control deck, and especially against fairies, you're going to be wanting to just play out your lands, make land drops. They Augur Bolus and they find a counter spell. So I'm trying to think if I can play around that. I think right now I can't, so I'm just going to keep developing my blue mana. What I want to do here is wait until they are pinched on mana, casting Augury on their end step, and then maybe casting Contentious Plan and Insight on my turn. They're going to get in. No Ninja here. They Preordain for top, bottom, and pass the turn, holding up in 4 mana. So it's kind of representing, to me, like Counterspell plus Spellstutter Sprite or double Spellstutter Sprite. I play a land and pass. They cycle, so they have an island and 4 unknowns in hand. They draw a card, so it's 5 unknowns in hand again. Get in for 1. Here comes a Ninja. So what I want to do here is Augury in response. I guess it doesn't matter, but we want to Augury before damage so they have fewer cards in hand, making them do something now if they're going to do something. And I find an Anoint with Affliction and Chalice and Anoint. I'm taking the Anoint with Affliction so I can take out a Spellstutter Sprite, hopefully. We get a bunch of counters, so that's good. Here comes the Ninja. They draw a card and go to 6. They still have the Augur of Bolus in hand. Alright. The problem here is that we ran out of black sources, so we can't cast the Anoint, but it doesn't really matter. So we're going to try to cast the Anoint to get poison on the opponent. They do have a counterspell. And then from here, we could cast Contentious Plan, or we could cast Vivid Insight. Or we could double cast Deep Analysis. I decided to go for the Contentious Plan into Deep Analysis. Also a good play. Boom, we draw 3 cards. That actually, by playing those two to draw 3 cards, we played around Spell Pierce on the Contentious plan, and then any counterspell in the Deep Analysis would have been low value for them, as well as if we had just cast the Insight, we would have had to discard in hand size. Cast an Augur of Bolts and get a Lightning Bolt. It's a little scary. And it's scary because they could just bolt us out at some point. 15. Alright, so here is where I'm going to try to make my play. Play the Pentad Prism. See if they have a counterspell. We already played 2, no, just 1. We cast a Prologue, see if they counter it. We counterspell the Prologue. So I'm going to cast the Anoint. Cast the Infectious Inquiry. Okay, so Infectious Inquiry resolves. They have 1 counter. Now I think I start making some mistakes. Cast Thirsting Roots. Alright, no. They have Spellstutter Sprite, so this is... We specifically baited out the Spellstutter Sprite here so we could anoint it. It's bad into Spell Pierce, but hopefully they don't have it. So I'm making them not having Spell Pierce, and I get it. So now this fizzles, I get to Proliferate. They go to 2. I have a ton of mana now, which is awesome. Our opponent goes Lightning Bolt, untap, and they exile my Pentad Prism with Shattering Blow over here. Play a Fairy Seer with 2 cards in hand. They get to Scry, which is scary. They go bottom though, so they're going to get a blind draw off the Ninja. Draw, 3 cards in hand, 2 cards in hand. They play out the land. I'm not sure if playing out the land was correct or not, but because having 3 cards in hand is much scarier for me. Let's see what happens. Okay, so we find Breath Weapon. This means that my whole goal is to try to bait them and Breath Weapon all their fairies and their ninja. I could just cast it right now. Oh no, I don't have any red mana. Never mind. Okay. So we cast Insight trying to find red mana. Leaving up green for potential Weather the Storm. Cast Deep Analysis from the graveyard. We're going to cast a Prologue. They don't respond to that, so I Weather the Storm. Could maybe have cast Pentad Prism, but I was kind of nervous that they were just going to Spellstutter Sprite my Pentad Prism. So I just Weather the Storm, back up to 16, pass a turn. Trying to find a spot to resolve this Pentad Prism. Sketchy. Alright, they hit me down to 12. We find double Prism here, so now we're good. Prism into Prism. We can cast the Infectious Inquiry, draw some cards, Thirsting Roots. So I think I don't really know what's going to happen here. I think in my mind I'm like, okay, I'm dead with this Breath Weapon to double Spellstutter Sprite. If I Breath Weapon right now, they still counter the Thirsting Roots. I'm trying to get the poison on them. They go for the Sprite. I decide to let the Sprite resolve, and then I don't do anything. Cast a Deep Analysis. On a Contentious plan, play that. I was trying to test the waters to see if they have a second Spellstutter Sprite, and they don't respond to it. So now I'm like, what is in their hand? And I decide to just play the Breath Weapon and pray, and they don't have a response. So I feel like I got pretty lucky there. So now they're down to just an Augur Bolus in play, cast a Fairy Seer, and their clock is dramatically reduced. Go to 9. We find a Deep Analysis. We'll start off on the Insight. They have Pyroblast. This is when Insight looks really bad. When they counter a 5-mana spell for 1 mana. Youch. We're going to cast Deep Analysis. We find Augury. Let's see what we get. So Augury finds Weather the Storm. And we're in a predicament here because if they have double Bolt... Okay, so here's where I make a mistake, I think. We're going to get all of our counters. We can Weather the Storm to survive. We can draw a lot of cards. I think we're in a great spot. But the mistake is I have 2 options. I can cast Weather the Storm now and then cast Deep Analysis from the graveyard. Or I can Deep Analysis from the graveyard and then cast Weather the Storm. So Weather the Storm would make up the life loss from the Deep Analysis. So essentially, like, if I cast Weather the Storm first, I gain 15, lose 3, so I really only gain 12. If I cast Deep Analysis first, I gain 15. I really think I should cast Weather the Storm first here in retrospect, but what I do is I already was like sketched out about playing the breath weapon into all their counters, and then assuming they had another spell stutter sprite. Maybe them playing a second Fjord here means that they just are flooded. That's probably what happened. But I decided to go for the deep analysis from the graveyard, putting myself dead to double bolt, and then realizing it immediately, feeling very terrible, and then going, okay, I guess I die, and cast Weather the Storm, waiting for them to bolt me out. They don't have the bolt. We go to 24, and now the game is probably locked up. They're getting in for 2. So they play nothing, pass the turn. Play Chalice, seeing if they have Sprite. They didn't have Sprite. I cast an Insight. They have a Spell Pierce. So we just pay for the Spell Pierce, get a bunch of counters, and then we have 1, 2, 3, 4 poison in hand. So we just play out the poisons. Bam. Poison them up. Here's some poison. Okay. Get some counters. Play another one. And then we could play one of any of these 3 to win the game. So we end up getting there. Let's see what I decide to play. Probably just play the Augury. They bolt us. So I did have 1 bolt in hand, but it was somehow they didn't have 2 double bolt, and just got very, very lucky, I think. I don't know. I think overall this was like a better list versus fairies. I think Thirsting Roots has been overperforming here. And now the last match versus Forgered. So I've been scared. They've been on like red, other stuff, all kinds of things. All right, keep this hand. Looks like we have a turn 2 prologue into a turn 3 contentious plan. So we're going to immediately poison them and start proliferating ASAP while drawing cards. I think it's good enough, even though we don't have a depletion in hand. We're going to lead on Island and say go. Our opponent leads on Colony Gardens. And this person is not known to play Bogles. So I remember that I saw them on black-green mono-black control, and I feel like I'm going to win. Go ahead and play the Forest into a prologue. Just start making things happen. So you're on 1 poison immediately. They can't do anything. We play our blue source, and we contentious plan. Maybe it would have been better to just play the prologue here, so I could contentious plan and add mana to our other depletions. But I have other proliferation in hand, so I feel like it's fine. We proliferate, play out a prologue, find a Pentad Prism. That's awesome. That means we don't have to Thirsting Roots for the black source, and we actually draw a black source. So we can go Pentad Prism into Thirsting Roots into Vivid Surgeon's Insight. Let's see if that's what I do. Just play out the Insight. Okay. The other option here is to save the Thirsting Roots in case. Okay, we just play it in a different order, which is fine. All right. Opponent's turn. They're already at 6 poison. They Reckoner's Bargain their creature and then play the Avenging Hunter. A full price Avenging Hunter on turn 5. It's just not good enough. We haven't even really done anything, but our opponent didn't either. So they're at 6 poison. We cast an Inquiry into an Augury for another Inquiry. They're at 8 poison, and we just win the game. Cast Plan into Inquiry. We poison them up. Got him. Cast the Inquiry, and you are dead. So post board, we are bringing in 4 Moments Peace, taking out Everflowing Chalice, Deep Analysis, Teachings, and a Breath Weapon. I think it's possible that you want to get rid of 1 Everflowing Chalice instead of the Deep Analysis here, but I figured that they would probably have like a fast clock, so Moments Peace would be good. And Breath Weapon is obviously not very good against the initiative, so my plan is to just try to fog them out. Let's see how it works. Alright, Forger is going to play first. We are just going to close these things. Now I'm discussing my sideboarding plan. Okay, Moments Peace. Correct. Get rid of the sideboard. Let's see what happens. Okay, this is a very good hand. We have Contentious Plan, Double Prism. Very, 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 very good. So we're going to lead on Peat Bog into either Prism or second Peatbog, and we drew a Scary. So now I want to play out the Scary, I think. The only thing I'm concerned about is a Duress type effect. Okay, one more very good draw here in the Infectious Inquiry. That means we can go Prism into Inquiry next turn. Plus play the Peatbog. Prism, Inquiry, Peatbog in play. Alright, they bog us, no big deal. Now on our turn, we can play the Prism into Contentious Land, and then at 5 mana, 6 mana, we can actually play Prologue into Weatherstorm or just cast Physician's Insight. Let's see what happens. They already have a poison counter on them, so here comes the Contentious Plan. Get a bunch of mana. So that Contentious Plan was free because of these two Prisms. We find Everflowing Chalice. So that makes me want to just go Chalice into Insight. Cast the Chalice, play the Insight. That means the Insight costs me essentially 2 mana. Alright, drew those 3 cards. And now, since we just proliferated and we draw Thirsting Roots, we can proliferate again and cast Weather Storm for 18 life. Couple ammo. 18 life, go to 30 some odd, 34. They cast a Wellspring and then dispute the Wellspring. They had 4 poison already, casting Unexpected Fangs. So now they have a clock of 5. Just attack with everything. Here, probably should have played out the Scary before playing the Insight. See what happens. Just play the Insight first. Yeah, that was, I think, a mistake. You always want to play out your depletions unless you think that you have to do so much this turn that you're relying on drawing an untapped land. You want the Scaries in play. Alright, I could consider adding a counter here and just showboating, but I don't think that's necessary. We play the Pentad Prism. Okay, well, check this out. Now we have 1, 2, 3, 4 with counters. Our Experimental Augury is plus 2 mana. That's wild. Play Experimental Augury, get plus 2 mana. Now we find a Thirsting Roots. We might just be dead this turn. Okay. They're probably dead this turn. Okay, play Thirsting Roots, get a bunch more mana. So now we can hardcast Deep Analysis for tapping just the Chalice and 1 counter here. But probably want to play the Prologues first. You know, I think I end up playing Prologue into Inquiry into Prologue. Alright, that's the game. And I brought up the sideboarding in the end. So we can go back. Looking at the list here, I think I wouldn't change anything specifically after this league. I feel very confident. I like how we have 4 Moments Peace for regular aggro decks. The only thing that I'm scared about is Fairies. Breath Weapon seems okay there. So combining that with all of our removal spells, we can kind of play the counter deck. And like I talked about, Moments Peace is generally better than Nihil Spellbomb against the Terror deck. And then you can also bring Moments Peace in against Affinity, because they are relying on attacking you eventually. Hopefully Bring the Ending will be good. I hope you enjoyed this. I know replays aren't as fun as regular videos, but I was extremely hyped to finally get that trophy. Hopefully next time I get a trophy, it's not going to require a split. Alright. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments. I'll see you. Remember, I'm always on generally around on Discord, or you can hit me up on Twitter, and we'll see you there. See you in the next video. Thanks, everybody.